When my wife passed away, my son looked me straight in the eye and said, "You cannot bring mom back. And besides, my wife's birthday only comes once a year." Those words stung harder than I can explain, like somebody had slapped me across the face. The very next morning, he showed up with some important request, acting as though that cruel remark had never left his lips. That was the moment I decided to answer his insult, to stand up for Rosalind and for myself. I would not let it pass. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. My hands trembled as I dialed Derek's number at 8:15 in the morning, adjusting my black tie for the third time before pressing the call button. On the counter sat Rosalind's coffee cup, still faintly marked with her lipstick. The kitchen had an emptiness to it, no soft humming of hers in the background. The phone rang 4 times, then Derek answered, his voice still thick with sleep. "Yeah?" he mumbled. "Son, it's your dad," I said, straightening up. "The funeral begins at 11:15. I could hear loud music pounding through the line, laughter carrying over it. Brianna's voice cut through, shrieking about decorations. Derek coughed and tried to sound steady. "Dad, I told you yesterday," he said. "Brianna's birthday party is tonight. We have been putting this together for months." It was like someone poured a bucket of ice water over me. I squeezed the receiver tighter. "Your mother's funeral is today, Derek. That only happens once in a lifetime." He cut me off. "Look, Mom is gone, but Brianna's birthday is once a year. We have caterers, a band setting up. I know Mom raised me for 34 years, and I'm grateful for that, but I cannot walk away from Brianna on her big day. You understand, right?" The line went dead, leaving nothing but the buzz of the dial tone. I sat frozen for 3 full minutes, staring at Rosalind's reading glasses resting beside the phone. The kitchen clock showed 8:32. My wedding ring caught a ray of morning sun that streamed through the windows Rosalind had polished just last week. The funeral program lay on the counter. Derek's name was there, listed as pallbearer. My pen scratched it out with slow, deliberate strokes. At the cemetery, people kept turning their heads, searching. "Where is Derek?" Rosalind's sister Judith asked again and again. I rehearsed my answer in my head. He had important commitments. The lie sat bitter on my tongue. 22 people came to say goodbye to my wife of 37 years. Her own son was not one of them. I stood beside her casket, surrounded by Rosalind's garden club friends and the neighbors we had known for decades. The spot where Derek should have been felt enormous, like a hole in the ground that would never be filled. Rosalind had been so proud of that boy. Mrs. Henderson leaned over and whispered, "She never stopped bragging about his success." I just nodded, throat too tight to speak. Rosalind defended Derek right up until the end. "He is busy with his new life," she would say whenever he skipped her chemotherapy appointments. "Young couples need their own space." The pastor's words floated over the crowd. Family bonds, eternal love. I watched each shovel of dirt land on the polished wood, knowing it was not just Rosalind being buried that day. It was also the illusions I had clung to about our son. On the drive home, I clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The passenger seat sat empty beside me, the seat Rosalind always took. She always preferred her little Honda over my old truck, said it was easier on the environment. The radio played her favorite tune, and I shut it off. Our neighborhood looked the same as ever, trimmed lawns, neat mailboxes, the life she and I had built. I pulled into our driveway and sat there for a while, gathering enough strength to walk into the silence. The key turned in the lock with its usual click. I hung it on the hook Rosalind had installed years ago, a small everyday gesture that suddenly felt monumental in the quiet house. No humming from the kitchen, no low murmur of the television, only the creak of a house stuffed with 37 years of memories. I loosened my black tie and dropped into the brown leather armchair. Rosalind always said it clashed with her floral curtains. She wanted to redecorate, but I was too caught up in keeping the business alive. Now those curtains would stay forever. Our wedding photo sat on the mantel. Rosalind at 22, glowing in her grandmother's dress. We had married right here in Riverside Falls and promised each other everything we had. I kept my end of that promise, maybe more than I should have. Memories came rushing in whether I wanted them or not. Derek taking his first steps across this same living room, those little hands reaching for Rosalind. Birthday parties decorated with paper cutouts we made ourselves because we could not afford store-bought supplies. Rosalind working double shifts at the diner, while I poured everything into building my construction company. She never once complained. Not when I worked 16-hour days. Not when dinner was macaroni and cheese 3 weeks straight. After Derek had fallen asleep between us in bed, too small to have a room of his own, she would whisper, "We are building his future." Upstairs, I found her Bible on the nightstand, bookmarks marking her favorite psalms. A folded note slipped out. In her careful hand, it read, "My dearest Harrison, please do not let Derek forget us. We gave him all we had. I pray that it was enough. All my love, R." My hands shook as I read her words. Later in the closet, I found the special box she had kept hidden. Inside were Derek's report cards saved from kindergarten through college, every shining grade preserved, every little milestone marked. On the margins, she had written her thoughts. So proud. Our brilliant boy. The graduation photos cut the deepest. Derek in his cap and gown, that degree paid for by Rosalind's overtime and my weekend jobs. Total cost, $192,000. His smile never showed the sacrifices behind it. I grabbed a calculator. The house down payment I covered, $325,000. His wedding to Brianna, $69,000. His first car, $32,000. Graduate school he never finished, $48,000. Then came the loans for trips, shopping, and Brianna's failed ventures. Meanwhile, Rosalind's coffee cup still sat in the dishwasher, her romance novel open on the nightstand, get well cards lined across the counter. Friends cared more in her final months than our son ever did. The total climbed to $694,000 over 14 years, nearly $1 million of our lives poured into him. I thought of my own father. He gave me only $20 and told me to make my own way. Maybe he was right. Darkness settled, a car idled in the driveway, then left. At 5:45 a.m., I sat at my desk, folders lined up. Derek, education, Derek, house, Derek, wedding. My coffee went cold as I opened the calculator again. Bank records told the story. 14 years of transfer to Derek and emergency loan. College alone was 4 years at $48,000 each. Then $44,000 for an MBA he dropped before running off to Europe. Another $32,000. The house at 25 nearly ruined us. Derek and Brianna stood in my living room, short on a down payment. I covered the $325,000 and co-signed the loan. He hugged me, saying, "Family helps family." What business? He had worked for me since graduation, drawing a salary he never earned. Rosalind's notebook recorded every sacrifice. Anniversary dinner canceled for $5,000 car repairs, groceries downgraded, doctor visits postponed. Her last note read, "We gave Derek everything. I hope he remembers us kindly." The calculator glowed, $694,000. My father sent me into the world with $25 and a handshake. I built everything from nothing. Derek treated it like his birthright. Last Christmas, he called my company a family business, as if he'd built it beside me. Brianna nodded, already planning profits from my 40 years of labor. My grief shifted to resolve. Rosalind had warned me, maybe we're doing too much for him. Her photo sat on the desk as I whispered, "You were right." The phone rang. Derek's name appeared. After 4 rings, I picked up. "Hey, Dad. Hope you're doing okay after yesterday." No mention of the funeral. No question about how I was coping. "I'm managing," I said, steady. Good, good. Listen, Brianna's party was amazing, but we overspent. You only turned 31 once. We had a live band, steakhouse dinner, diamond bracelet, but now the credit cards are due. We're looking at about $14,000 right away. $14,000. I did the math instantly. Loan number 43 in 14 years. Yesterday I buried my wife. Today my son wanted money for a birthday party. So, can you wire it today? Brianna's stressed about the bills. You know how she gets. I looked from Rosalind's photograph to the neat columns of numbers showing what Derek had cost our marriage. No. A pause. What do you mean, no? Is the bank having trouble? I mean, no, Derek. I will not give you any more money. His cheerful tone cracked. You're seriously saying no? After everything we've been through this week? As if he'd been the one standing at Rosalind's funeral instead of throwing a party. You're 34 years old. So what? That doesn't mean you stop helping your son when he's in a jam. It's not like you can't afford it. Brianna's voice rose in the background. Tell him we need it. We already spent it. I said no. The words felt strange, the first time I had ever denied Derek anything. "This is unbelievable," he snapped. "Mom just died, and you're being petty about money. She'd want you to help us." His manipulation was polished, the same trick that had worked for 34 years. "Your mother wanted you at her funeral," I answered. His breathing grew harsh. "Fine, we'll figure it out. More cards, Brianna's parents, whatever. But don't expect us to come around if this is how you're going to be." His presence had always been the reward for my money, his absence the punishment. "I understand," I said. "You what?" "I understand. Take care, Derek." I hung up. For the first time in decades, the phone sat silent on my desk, no longer a tool of manipulation. I opened my laptop and pulled up Derek's employee file. Tomorrow we would talk again, but this time in the office where I was the boss, not the father. At 7:15 a.m., I walked into Blackwood Construction's lobby, 2 hours before Derek's usual arrival. His photo hung on the management wall, the suit I'd bought him, smiling with confidence I now recognized as entitlement. In my office, his personnel file spread out like evidence in court. 7 years of missed deadlines, contractor complaints, inflated expenses, projects delayed by long lunches, and clients lost. I had excused all of it under family loyalty and Rosalind's gentle reminders that Derek was still learning. But any other employee would have been fired years ago. At 8:30, I called Linda Crawford, our HR director. She had been documenting Derek's failures for months. "I'll prepare the termination documents immediately," she said. "Do you want security?" "Yes." Standard procedure. I practiced in the mirror, making sure my words held no emotion, just the facts. Derek would walk in as an employee and leave terminated. At 9:15, he arrived 15 minutes late, joking with the receptionist about his recovery from Brianna's party. His laughter echoed while coworkers glanced at my office door. He stopped for coffee, still clueless. "Derek, come to my office immediately," I said over the intercom. "Sure, Dad. Let me grab my coffee." "Now, Derek." The silence that followed told me he heard the difference. His footsteps came slower, heavier. When he opened my door and saw Linda with the paperwork, his smile faltered. "What's with the setup?" he asked, trying for casual but sounding unsure. I stayed seated, hands folded. "Derek, your employment with Blackwood Construction is terminated, effective immediately." His laugh was forced. "Very funny, Dad. What's this really about?" I slid the termination papers across the desk. "Please review these documents and sign where indicated," I told him. The papers seemed to burn in his hands as he lifted them. His eyes darted over the legal wording, his face draining of color. "You can't be serious. This is our family business." "This decision is based on your performance and conduct," I replied, steady and professional. "Your position has been eliminated due to restructuring." "This is about yesterday's phone call, isn't it?" His voice cracked. "Look, I'm sorry about the money thing. We can work it out." "Security will escort you so you can collect your personal items," I said. Derek's disbelief turned to desperation. "Mom wouldn't want this. You know she wouldn't." He leaned forward, trying to pull guilt from me the way he always had. I pressed the security button. "This is a business decision, not a personal one." Paul Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, calm but firm. Derek's face went crimson as he realized this was real, not some bluff. In the hall, coworkers gathered, staring at the son of their former boss being escorted like any other terminated employee. "Dad, please." His voice broke as he grabbed his coffee mug and a photo of Brianna from his desk. "Think about what this means." I met his eyes for the first time. "I have." Through my window, I watched him load that pitiful collection of belongings into his car. His shoulders shook, with rage or grief, I could not tell. When he turned to glance at the building one last time, I looked away. Linda came back with the completed paperwork. "All access codes are changed. His computer access is terminated." I walked to the management wall myself, pulled down Derek's framed photo, and set it face down in a drawer. The empty space looked cleaner. A knock at the door. My secretary's voice. "Mr. Blackwood, someone is here to see you without an appointment." The sharp click of designer heels echoed through the lobby. Brianna stormed in, hair windswept but still carefully styled. Derek trailed behind her, head down, a hollow version of the man who had walked in that morning. "How dare you humiliate Derek like this?" she shouted, fingers stabbing the air toward me. I stayed seated, calm, unmoved by her theatrics. Derek stepped between us, his embarrassment written across his face. Brianna, let me handle this. She ignored him. We have bills to pay, Harrison, a lifestyle to keep up. This business belongs to Derek, too. This is a workplace, I said evenly. You need to leave. Her face flushed deeper. We deserve severance pay, at least 6 months. Derek's given 7 years to this company. You owe us. Derek's voice wavered. Dad, can we talk privately? No, Brianna cut him off. He needs to hear this. I know about wrongful termination laws. Derek was an at-will employee, I replied. No severance is required by law or contract. Brianna's attacks grew sharp, her words chosen like knives. Rosalind would be ashamed of you. You're having a breakdown, aren't you? Just a bitter old man taking it out on us. Derek's face went pale. Brianna, please, don't. I clenched my jaw, but stayed composed. This was exactly what I had expected, manipulation dressed up as outrage. Derek tried again, reaching for something that would move me. Dad, I know I messed up with the funeral. I'm sorry, but firing me won't bring Mom back. Think about what this means for our family, for your future grandchildren. The words hung like smoke. I looked at him, this man who shared my blood but not my values. What family? Brianna's voice rose, more venom now. We'll sue for our share of Rosalind's estate. Derek is entitled to half of everything. We know about the life insurance. Rosalind left everything to me, I said simply. Her bluster cracked for a second. That's impossible. We're consulting a lawyer. I pressed the security button again. Paul appeared with 2 more guards. The commotion had drawn even more employees to the hall. I'm not leaving, Brianna screamed as they moved toward her. This is theft. This is abuse. Her resistance was loud but useless. The entire office heard her accusations as she was escorted out through the lobby. Derek's humiliation only deepened, watching his wife dragged away from the company that had carried them for years. When the noise faded, Derek stood alone in my office. His voice dropped to a whisper, clinging to the last card he had to play. I'm all the family you have left. His words were meant to crush me, but instead, they cleared the fog. I looked at the man across from me, a stranger who had worn my son's face for over 30 years, and I told him the truth he needed to hear. No, you're just someone who used to be my son. Derek's face collapsed. For a flicker of a moment, I saw the little boy who used to come running into my arms after school, grinning with scraped knees and messy hair. Then it was gone, and only the entitled man remained. He turned and left without another word. I stepped out of my office to face my employees, who had gathered with worried looks. I kept my voice calm, professional. I explained this was a personal matter and would not affect operations. Most nodded. After all, they had seen Derek's behavior for years. I gave security one final instruction. Please make sure Mrs. Blackwood is never allowed inside this building again. When I was alone, my hands trembled slightly. The hardest part was over. I looked at Rosalind's photo on my desk. I hope you understand, I whispered. Then I opened my computer and searched for estate planning attorneys. It was time to move to the next phase. I scheduled an appointment with Adrian Blackwell for that afternoon. Derek's birthday was marked on my calendar for next month. I deleted it permanently. At 2:15 p.m., I walked into the polished reception area of Blackwell & Associates, carrying my leather briefcase stuffed with Rosalind's will, insurance papers, and the financial records that outlined everything I had decided. Their office sat high above Riverside Falls, the tallest building in the city. Sunlight poured through Adrian Blackwell's corner windows, falling across mahogany shelves lined with law books and stacks of active case files. Adrian rose from behind his desk as I walked in. Concern showed in his eyes. We had known each other for 18 years. He had drawn up Rosalind's will, handled my business incorporation, and managed countless matters where I needed absolute discretion. How are you holding up, Harrison? His voice carried real sympathy. I waved off his offer of coffee and sat down in the leather chair across from him. I need to make some changes to my estate planning. Adrian straightened, his expression shifting to business. Of course. Updating beneficiaries after Rosalind's passing is standard. No, I said firmly, pulling the documents from my case. I'm removing Derek entirely. The words hit him like a physical blow. His professional mask slipped for a moment. Harrison, I need to understand what's driving this. I told him calmly. I told him how Derek had missed his own mother's funeral, how he had said Brianna's birthday was more important, how he had asked me for $14,000 the very next day. Adrian's face darkened as the story went on. As Rosalind's friend and our attorney, you know how serious this is, I said. I want a new will. The primary beneficiary will be the Rosalind Blackwood Education Trust. Adrian leaned forward, eyes sharp now. Harrison, I'm obligated to make sure you're thinking clearly about this. I've never been more certain, I replied. Then I laid out my vision. Scholarships for underprivileged children, funding for cancer research, causes Rosalind had always championed. Derek is to be excluded completely, along with any of his future descendants. As I spoke, Adrian's concern shifted into admiration. He began outlining the legal strategy, placing my company assets into an irrevocable trust, ensuring everything was protected from lawsuits. I would keep control while alive, and the foundation would take over when I was gone. We'll need to update all insurance beneficiaries as well, Adrian noted, writing carefully. This is very thorough. I explained that the family home would be sold, with proceeds going to the foundation. Rosalind's jewelry would be auctioned for charity. Only her wedding ring would be kept, to be buried with me. What about Derek's childhood belongings? Adrian asked softly. Donated, I answered. I'm removing Derek from my life completely. Adrian did his duty as both lawyer and friend. He asked questions about my mental state, my clarity, my detailed answers, my planning, my steady tone. All of it showed him I was of sound mind. His doubts faded. He shifted from concerned to respectful. We held a formal signing with 2 witnesses from his firm. My hand was steady as I signed. With each stroke of the pen, Derek was legally cut out. I want Derek to receive formal notice of this change, I told Adrian. He moved quickly through the rest. Power of attorney documents, removing Derek from any authority, medical directives cutting him out of healthcare decisions, a living will with specific instructions. He documented my competency in detail. Tomorrow, I would visit the banks myself to remove Derek as beneficiary on retirement and investment accounts. Adrian offered to help coordinate. We discussed trustees, board members for the foundation, and even the first scholarship recipients. For the first time in weeks, I felt peace settle in. Rosalind's memory would live on, not through Derek, but through the good she had always wanted to bring into the world. Rosalind's memory would live on through education, something she had cherished her whole life. Rosalind would be proud of this foundation, Adrian said as we finished. She always believed in education and in helping others. For the first time in days, I felt something close to satisfaction, real, genuine peace instead of the cold determination that had carried me this far. Adrian understood. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. In that office, I shifted from a grieving husband and father into a man with purpose, ready to build something lasting. We shook hands outside the law firm. On my phone were 3 missed calls from Derek, the first hint that he was starting to realize what had happened. I didn't bother listening to the voicemails. I deleted them all and walked toward my car. The next step was waiting. The Riverside Falls Country Club's lobby welcomed me with its usual elegance. Mahogany-paneled walls, crystal chandeliers casting warm light, oil portraits of long-gone founders staring down from their frames. Old money and established tradition were in the very air. I had walked these halls for 14 years as the club's treasurer, and that afternoon was no different. 11 board members gathered around the polished conference table, first chatting through routine business while the smell of leather chairs and fresh coffee filled the room. Their quiet conversations carried the same undertones of sympathy I had been hearing all week. Thomas Bennett, our board president, came over to me with a handshake full of warmth. Harrison, the memorial service was beautiful. Rosalind would have been pleased. Thank you for the flowers, I said, meaning it. Judith Walsh, Rosalind's sister and a longtime member of the club, soon joined us. She hesitated, then asked the question I knew was coming. I kept looking for Derek during the service. Where was he? The pause stretched. I could have lied, softened it, made excuses, but truth would honor Rosalind better. Derek chose not to attend his mother's funeral. The words rippled across the room like a stone dropped into still water. Faces around the table grew tight. Judith's went pale. What do you mean, chose not to? I gave them Derek's exact words, the way he had said them to me, that Brianna's birthday party mattered more. The disgust on their faces said enough. These were people who valued loyalty, duty, and respect, values Derek had long since abandoned. Thomas's wife, Caroline, who had been listening from the hall, disappeared quickly with her phone in hand. Within the hour, the story had made its way into the Ladies' Bridge Club, and by nightfall, it was running through Riverside Falls' social circles like fire through dry grass. I came home that evening not realizing the storm I had set loose. The first wave didn't hit me. It hit Brianna. The very next morning at her upscale yoga studio, the instructor stopped her mid-session and told her to leave. "We prefer members with family values," came the cold explanation. Derek wasn't spared either. His lunch invitation at the country club was canceled with a polite but firm phone call. Their regular table at Willowbrook Bistro suddenly became permanently unavailable. Brianna's confusion turned to anger as these moments began piling up. Saturday brought Derek's most humiliating blow. His golf foursome offered thin excuses, packed up early, and left him standing on the green. The pro shop manager suggested maybe Derek would be more comfortable playing elsewhere. He walked to his car alone, realizing everyone knew about the funeral. Brianna's shopping trip to Riverside Boutique ended the same way. Years of warm smiles from staff vanished overnight. Her credit application hit delays, and the manager suggested she try another store. Derek's professional life collapsed just as quickly. Job interviews were canceled without explanation. Business contacts he once bragged about stopped returning calls. Even his Chamber of Commerce lunch was cut short, polite but awkward, the story of his absence at Rosalind's funeral reaching the table before he did. The final straw came when Elite Salon canceled Brianna's standing appointment. Other clients whispered about her heartless husband. Brianna left in tears. The local newspaper added to their downfall with a sharp mention in the society column, Rosalind's son missing from her service. At church, members made their disapproval plain. Friends they once leaned on began avoiding them. Derek tried explaining, insisting I exaggerated, but no one believed him. Riverside Falls had made up its mind. Brianna eventually broke. She turned her fury on Derek, blaming him for their ruined reputation. She demanded he fix it immediately. When he admitted he didn't know how, she threatened to leave if things didn't change. I heard about all this through friends, neighbors, and colleagues. I didn't need to gloat. The community was simply enforcing its own values: loyalty to family, respect for the dead, basic human decency. Derek had ignored them all, and now Riverside Falls itself was honoring Rosalind by rejecting those who dishonored her. One morning, while I ate breakfast, my phone rang. It was the bank manager. "Mr. Blackwood, Derek and Brianna's mortgage is 30 days overdue. You're still guaranteeing the loan, correct?" I paused, thinking of what came next. "I'd like to schedule a meeting tomorrow to discuss changes to my guarantees." Social rejection had cut deep. Financial pressure would finish the job. At 8:45 a.m. the next day, I stepped into First National Bank's marble lobby. Oil portraits of stern men who built Riverside Falls on hard work lined the walls. The manager, Russell Pemberton, waited in his corner office overlooking Riverside Creek, the small boats drifting peacefully downstream. Russell looked uneasy as he spread Derek and Brianna's files across his mahogany desk. Mortgage papers, loan agreements, guarantee forms, a thick trail of dependency. "Harrison, thank you for coming on short notice," he began, voice formal. "Derek's mortgage is now 60 days delinquent. The amount due is $17,100. I folded my hands and stayed calm. "I understand you're expecting me to cover the guarantee." "Well, yes, as you've done for the past 3 months," Russell said, clearly assuming I would sign. "I'm withdrawing my guarantee, effective immediately." His face drained of color. "I don't understand. You've guaranteed this loan for 8 years. I slid across documents Adrian Blackwell had prepared. "You'll find everything in order. 30 days notice as required by law." Russell called the bank's attorney in a panic while I sat quietly, watching traffic roll across the bridge Rosalind and I had walked together so many times. The lawyer's voice over the phone confirmed what Russell feared. My withdrawal was perfectly legal. "This means we'll have to begin foreclosure," Russell said weakly. "I understand. Please proceed quickly." Meanwhile, Derek suffered through his 9th interview in 2 weeks. The interviewer's frosty smile told him everything before he sat down. His explanations about new opportunities fell flat. The story of the funeral had arrived first. Thank you for your time, Mr. Blackwood. We'll be in touch. The polite dismissal ended his hope. He slumped out to his old Toyota, the BMW already repossessed. That afternoon, Brianna hit her own breaking point at Nordstrom. She went to buy mascara, only to hear the cashier say her platinum card was declined. Shocked, she snapped, "There must be some mistake." Her angry call to the credit company gave her the truth. "Your cosigner has withdrawn his guarantee." The account was suspended until the entire balance was paid. Brianna's public humiliation deepened as other shoppers watched her argue with customer service. That was the moment reality cut through, clear and sharp. I had dismantled every financial safety net they had relied on. When Derek and Brianna returned home, they found the power cut off. The utility company's notice hung on the door, unpaid bills totaling $1,100. Derek's attempt to negotiate ended the moment the clerk noticed his termination record. Their first night by candlelight became a lesson they couldn't ignore. Brianna paced the darkened living room, her designer heels snapping against the hardwood, screaming at Derek that he had ruined their lives. His weak excuses, blaming me for being vindictive, fell flat. "Fix this or I'm gone," she shouted, her voice like glass breaking. Derek scrambled to apply for new credit lines, but every application was denied instantly. Without income, his debt-to-income ratio crushed him. Brianna's maxed-out cards gave no relief. For the first time, they spoke about bankruptcy with genuine fear. The garage sale of their luxury trinkets was pitiful. Wedding gifts that once cost guests hundreds sold for $20. Friends drove by, slowed down to stare, but never stopped. Brianna stood frozen as strangers pawed through her jewelry collection, while Derek handed his golf clubs to a teenager for a fraction of their worth. When the BMW was repossessed in broad daylight, neighbors pressed their faces to windows. Derek emptied the trunk under the repo man's watchful eye, humiliation hanging heavy on him. Brianna screamed at the driver until her throat went raw. I drove by that evening and saw the chaos spilling from their driveway. It wasn't cruelty, it was consequence. Rosalind had always told me, actions bring results. Derek was finally learning. Not long after, Derek called me, his voice trembling, asking to meet. He said he had something important to tell me. I agreed. Riverside Falls Community Park. The next afternoon. The same place I had taught him to ride his bike 28 years ago, back when his face still showed love instead of calculation. I looked at an old photo of him on that bike, then turned it face down on my desk. 6 months after my meeting at the bank, the county foreclosure auction took place on the courthouse steps. I sat in my black sedan across the street, watching as 1156 Willowbrook Drive, the house Derek and Brianna once called their dream home, was put up for sale. The auctioneer read the legal description with dry precision, while investors and onlookers gathered. Derek and Brianna stood apart, their posture defeated. Sunlight caught the tears streaking Brianna's cheeks. I raised my binoculars and watched as the auctioneer announced, "Opening bid is $260,000 for this 4-bedroom colonial." A woman in a navy suit raised her hand. Derek stared, whispering to Brianna as the bidding climbed. At $292,000, only 2 bidders remained, the woman and a local contractor. Then Adrian Blackwell arrived, gave a subtle nod to the woman. Derek's suspicion hardened into certainty. "That's Dad's lawyer," he muttered, loud enough for the crowd to hear. Brianna's disbelief rang out. He couldn't. When Derek tried to approach, courthouse security blocked him. The auction rolled on, merciless. $294,000 going once, going twice, sold. Derek's knees buckled. Brianna's scream, "This is our home," echoed off the courthouse walls as the gavel came down. I stepped out of my car and walked toward the steps. Derek froze when he saw me. He understood then. Everything. The guarantee withdrawal, the timing, the exact bid amount. It had all been laid out like a blueprint. The bidder revealed herself. Linda Crawford, my secretary, standing as agent for the newly formed Crawford Properties, LLC. Derek stumbled forward, voice breaking. "How could you do this to us?" "I didn't," I said calmly. "The bank did." He begged, spoke of Rosalind's garden, her love for that house. My response was cold. "Rosalind isn't here to see what you've become." Brianna lunged at me, screaming wild accusations, elder abuse, incompetence, theft. Adrian Blackwell quietly documented her outburst as security carried her away. The scene revealed their true character more clearly than words ever could. 2 weeks later, the moving truck parked outside their house looked pitiful, far too small for the life they once flaunted. Brianna threw clothes into suitcases, rage twisting her face. Derek carefully wrapped Rosalind's crystal vase, the last gift that tied him to his mother. Neighbors watched silently from porches and windows, but no one came to help. Their social exile was total. That evening, Brianna snapped. "I can't live like this anymore." She admitted she'd been speaking with an old boyfriend. "I married into a wealthy family, not this." Her final words cut deep. "Your father was right about us." That night, Derek slept alone in the stripped-bare house, wandering through rooms filled with shadows of better days. In the back of the kitchen drawer, Derek discovered Rosalind's hidden note. "Derek, remember we love you." For the first time, his tears seemed real, not manipulative. He finally felt the weight of what he had lost. That same day, Linda Crawford handed me the house keys. I accepted them with quiet satisfaction. My decision to renovate the place and donate it to a deserving family would close the circle. Rosalind would have approved. She always believed justice should carry compassion. Later that evening, the phone rang. Caller ID showed Derek's name. He was calling from a payphone, his cell service already cut off. I let it go to voicemail. The final confrontation could wait. 3 months after losing the house, Derek stood at my front door at 7:15 p.m. on a cold November evening. He lingered there for a full minute, finger hovering over the bell, while I watched from the living room window, debating whether to open. When I finally did, I didn't invite him in. The sight of him startled me. His face was unshaven, his shirt wrinkled, his jeans worn thin. He looked 5 years older than when I'd last seen him. He was thinner, beaten down, stripped of the arrogance he once wore so easily. "Dad, I know I messed up terribly," he began, his voice trembling. He launched into a speech about lessons learned, about living in a studio apartment above a laundromat, working at a gas station for minimum wage, about Brianna leaving him for her ex-boyfriend who owned a restaurant chain. He swore he had changed, that he now understood what really mattered. Then he switched tactics, trying to tug at my loneliness. He said I didn't have to be alone in this big house, that he could finally be the son Rosalind wanted him to be. But I could hear the manipulation in every word. I cut him off. "When is your mother's birthday?" Derek froze, then guessed. "June 15th? Her favorite flower? Roses?" Wrong again. Rosalind loved daisies. The truth hit me in that instant. He had never really known her at all. Frustration seeped into his voice. The entitled tone returned. "This is ridiculous. Just tell me what you want me to say." Finally, the mask slipped. "Okay, yes, I need help," he admitted. The eviction notices, the promises to repay me once he was back on his feet, the argument that I was wealthy enough to help. Derek still saw me as nothing but an ATM. His last attempt was to invoke Rosalind. "Mom would be heartbroken to see us like this. She always believed in second chances. I miss her too, Dad. We both loved her." For a moment, I felt Rosalind's gentle spirit, her kindness, but then I remembered. This was the very fear she had carried. I reached into her nightstand and pulled out her hidden journal. "You want to know what your mother really thought?" I asked. I read her words aloud. "I'm worried Derek only loves our money. What if we raised a child who can't love?" The silence that followed was deafening. Derek's face drained. "Rosalind died knowing what you really are," I said evenly. "She changed her will before she passed. She left you nothing because she knew you'd waste it." Derek's mask dropped completely. Anger twisted his face. He threatened to contest the will, called me senile, promised lawyers and court battles. His final words, "I hope you die alone in this house," didn't wound me. They confirmed who he truly was. I stepped back and closed the door quietly. He pounded on it, shouting, but I walked to the kitchen and made myself tea, calm as if nothing had happened. When his car finally drove off, I sat in Rosalind's favorite chair, holding her journal. For the first time since her death, I felt complete peace. I looked at our wedding photo and whispered, "It's finished, my love." 1 year later, on a warm May morning, I walked through Riverside Cemetery carrying a bouquet of fresh daisies. Birds sang from the oaks, spring flowers lined the path. I looked healthier than I had in years. Kneeling at Rosalind's grave, I arranged the daisies before her polished headstone. I told her about the Rosalind Blackwood Education Trust first year. 18 scholarships awarded to students in need, $192,000 donated to cancer research, and the community center dedication scheduled for her birthday. I spoke plainly, like reporting facts. Derek was working at Pete's Corner Station on Riverside Highway. His divorce was final. Brianna had remarried her restaurant owner. Derek lived in isolation, financially broken. I felt no triumph in his downfall, only the steady weight of justice. Leaving the cemetery, I stopped at Riverside Diner. Derek worked behind the counter, his uniform stained. Our eyes met across the room. The shame on his face was visible as I sat down and ordered coffee. "How are you doing, Dad?" he asked, voice low, humble for the first time in his life. "I'm well, thank you." "I know sorry isn't enough," he said. "No, it isn't." His admission surprised me. His voice cracked. "I understand now what I lost. It was never about the money, was it? You wanted me to love you, not your wallet. Mom, she won that too." And for the first time, Derek's tears seemed real. "I did what I had to do," I told him. "Rosalind would have approved. I have no regrets." "I know," Derek whispered. "I deserved all of it." "Yes, you did." Those were my words when Derek asked if there was any way back. I answered honestly, "I don't know. Maybe. But you'd have to prove you've changed, not with words. Show me through your actions." I told him about my life now, volunteering at the community center, finding real friends among other volunteers, Sunday dinners with the Johnsons, whose daughter had received one of the foundation's scholarships. And for the first time in years, I was dating again. Helen, a kind widow from church whose quiet strength reminded me what companionship could mean. My days were no longer empty. They were full of purpose, filled with people who valued me for who I was, not what I had in my wallet. Visiting Emma Clark, our very first scholarship recipient, brought me a satisfaction deeper than anything money had ever bought. She wrote a letter to Rosalind's memory, thanking her for the chance to attend nursing school. That letter still sits framed on the Foundation's website, a permanent tribute. Rosalind's memory lived on through education. One afternoon, I drove past Derek's old house. The Ramirez family had made it their own, transforming it into a place full of love and gratitude. Mr. Ramirez waved from the garden Rosalind once tended, children running across the lawn where Derek had played as a boy. That house finally reflected everything Rosalind had valued: family, joy, gratitude. That evening, I cooked dinner in the kitchen Rosalind and I once shared. I set one plate, not with sadness, but with peace. My phone rang, Helen calling to talk about our weekend plans. I smiled, and for the first time since Rosalind's death, it wasn't forced. It was happiness. Later, I stood in the garden as the sun went down, trimming Rosalind's rose bushes. I felt like a man who had fought for justice and finally won. I knew with certainty that I had honored my wife's memory. The satisfaction was complete. That night, I went to bed early and slept soundly for the first time in 2 years. I dreamed of Rosalind, smiling, her voice soft and certain. "You did the right thing, Harrison. I'm proud of you." Justice had been served. Love had demanded hard choices, but they were the right ones. Rest in peace, my love. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. And as always, thank you for watching.